everybody, my name is Melissa Welsh, founder of Pixel Sense and Melissa Welsh Photography.
And I'm Amanda, founder of Amanda Haddow Photography. And here we are for the second episode of Wind Down Wednesdays. Cheers, guys.
Well, that's nice.
That's nice.
So, Amanda, how has your week been? Anything new and exciting happened this week?
Yeah, actually I got some potential leads come in to my email inbox and was able to get back to them right away with an email message. Unfortunately, I hadn't put my phone number in my reply to email off my contact list, so that's one of the first things I changed on my website this week, so that I can call clients back right away.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I was able to call this client back on the phone. I was able to walk through all the different steps that I've started to implement.
Yeah.
And then I left it in her hands from there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. So a couple of things I was just thinking about as you're talking. Maybe you can explain to everybody why you kind of breezed over it a little bit, but why you're implementing or why you added that phone number cell or whatever it is to fill in on your website.
Yeah, so before I just had an email address, and there was no way for me to actually touch base with the client. So I'm changing things around a little bit. I was able to get her number and I called her up and we honestly just talked through the whole process. And it made a huge difference to be able to hear her voice over the phone. I think I'd like to have her in to see her in person next time maybe. But this was nice to just be able to touch base on the phone. She was able to ask me questions in real time, and I was able to walk her through what the next steps would be for the process in real time myself also, which actually it saved on a lot of email back and forth communication. But it also, it gave me a point of contact with her that seemed a lot more casual and maybe more personal than just a generic email response would have been.
I guess in theory you could think of it as like the first step to actually building a relationship with somebody, right? Where an email, it can take way longer, way more emails to go back and forth before you feel like you might actually kind of know somebody. But by picking up the phone and calling somebody right away, they get to hear your voice. You know, you kind of, like you can make a connection over the phone way easier than you can over email, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that kind of, that ties in a little bit. So today we're talking about 3 things that you can do right away to implement or start to implement in-person sales into your company. And the first thing on our list today was immediately implementing a no emailing the price list policy in your company. And part of the reason that we say that is that people do business with people they know and like, right? And so if people are inquiring, they asking for prices, and all you do is send an email saying, yeah, thanks for your inquiry, here's my price list, call me if you're interested, then all your company is a price list. You know, all you are your prices. And that's not enough incentive to get people to make that decision to do business with you, right? Unless they're just shopping on price.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to get away from, right? So that is your takeaway number 1 today, is implement a no emailing the price list. And also a little extra step is, if you don't already, get your add that little phone number thing to your contact form on your website, so that you get, so when a lead comes in, you see the phone number and you call them right away. Because everybody emails, right? And you want to stand out from your competition in town, so make sure you're the first person to pick up the phone, call this person, and start building your relationship from there.
So one of the big questions that I had to ask, because this time around I'm not emailing that price list, how do I convey to them sort of they want a baseline as to where they're starting with prices. So how do I convey that to my client in a way that, you know, doesn't add a monetary value or if I'm not sending them that email price list, what's the best way to
So what do you talk
that?
about?
Yeah.
If all they want to know is what the price is, and you're like, well, why would I call them just to tell them the price? That doesn't seem
Right.
So that's a good question. What I would say is, well, what I always say to my clients when I get emails for pricing and that sort of thing is I give them a call and I let them know that I would love to, and this is usually through the email, that I would love to give them more information about my prices, but first I need to ask them a few questions. I need to learn a little bit more about what it is that they need. Now the truth is, what they need is usually almost always the same, but that is, I guess, the language that I use to get them on the phone so that I can talk to them. And when I get them on the phone, I just start asking a series of questions. And again, none of those questions actually honestly relate to the price that I'm gonna give them, but what I'm doing is I'm building a relationship. Is really what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm getting them to talk to me, I'm starting to learn about them. I am finding out whether or not this person is actually my client or not, because at a certain stage, you're going to have so much business that this is how you're going to vet your clients, you know,
Right.
Just be like, you know what, this isn't my client, all they want is the digital files, they're not interested in beautiful prints on their walls, it's just not their thing, and it's like, well, then you're just not my client, and that's cool, right? No
Yes.
sense taking them any further through the process if there's absolutely no way you can convert them. So, anyway, that is one, I don't know if that helps a little bit, but.
Yeah, no, that definitely helps. And I think, you know, if somebody isn't willing to give you their phone number, then they're not willing to talk about a session
Exactly.
anyway. And that's a way to weed out clients that might not be your ideal clientele. So I did find it hard not sending them that information this time around. It was totally different. It was a challenge on my part because that's just been quick and easy for me to do. But after actually touching base with somebody on the phone, it made so much more sense why I would do that next time. So yeah. Yes. Even though it's nerve-wracking. It's nerve-wracking just picking up that phone and not being sure of what you don't want everything to be scripted, but you want to be confident in what you're communicating to them.
And I think the important thing to remember is at the beginning it always is sort of scripted, but honestly once you've done 5 or 10 of those phone calls, it'll be like you know exactly what the process is, you know what you want to find out. You know, it's second nature. It gets easier, I promise. The second thing we're going to talk about today quickly is the second thing that you can do to help transition yourself from shoot and burn to IPS is restricting your file size. So if you want to take a little tiny baby step in the right direction, this is the first thing and you can do it right now because you don't actually have to change how you're answering the phone or making new price lists or anything like that. The big thing is making that file size smaller and creating opportunity to actually sell them those prints. So if you want to bring in a small product line, you know, even like a 5x7, 8x10, 11, 14, you can start there. You don't have to start with the 40-inch print. You know, because to sell that takes more equipment. You've got to have all kinds of other things in line. So if we're talking baby steps today, pick 3 prints that you would like to try and sell your clients. Restrict your file size so that you're only actually delivering. You can still deliver high-res files, but it doesn't have to be the full res file. Okay, so it can just be a 4x6 at 300 dpi is considered a a high-res file. You can still give your clients the printing rights to be able to print those, but you reserve the right to the larger sizes, and that is. So if nothing else, all you're doing is at least creating the opportunity to sell those larger files without alienating your current client base.
So to clarify, so this is for the digital files that we would restrict the size.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if before you were a shoot and burn photographer, you used to deliver 20 images on a disc for $500 or $300 or whatever it is, now what you're going to do is you can still deliver that disc of 20 photos. But now they're just the 4x6 files, okay?
Yeah.
And if that client wants, they're like, well, we really wanted, a 20-inch canvas for the dining room, and you say, that's great, because I reserve the right to print those files myself, because as an artist, I want to make sure that the art on your wall is archival and it's absolutely the most beautiful print, because you're going to have it in your family forever. Or whatever it is you decide to say.
That makes sense.
So that's number 2, and then number 3 is, it's not a baby step, it's kind of a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one.
But it's your cost of doing business. And this, for some people, they're able to like just cram this out overnight and figure it all out. But I would say probably for most people, it is a process of wrapping your head around not only your cost of doing business and what that means, but how to actually take that cost of doing business and those numbers and then apply it to the rest of your product line. You know, like how does my cost of doing business affect the price of my 8x10, right?
Yeah.
And that takes a little bit of, it takes a little while to figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Amanda has just gone through this process in the last couple of weeks, so I don't know if you can just say a little bit about what it has felt like, or, you know, a little bit about the process.
Yeah, it has been, for me, it's been a big undertaking because I really only offered digitals to people. And so now I've had to figure out the cost, you know, to produce those digitals, but to limit file size, to have a whole different print selection, to have a canvas selection, and to have an album selection. So there are lots of different pieces of the puzzle that need to be figured out, but at the end of the day, I know what I'd like my projected sales to be for the year, and so, you know, working backwards, I guess, from that point has made it a little bit easier. Once you decide on what products you want to sell in your studio and what you want to showcase, what you think people would use the most of, then you can kind of work back from there. And so it has made sense, but it has been, it's been a few good days of figuring it out for sure. Yeah.
One of the things I was just thinking about when we worked through the numbers, because before we sat down and did the course, you had like a basic, you had done some numbers yourself and you had an idea and you had created a product line, and then when we went through the course and we compared the numbers and they weren't the same, they were off, and we had a quick little conversation, or just even a realization that if you had started this business based on those numbers, we just talked about like how long it would have been before you figured out that you weren't making any money. Or you weren't making the money that you needed to be making to support your family, you know, or for it to make sense to have a studio and all these sorts of things, right? And it's like, it could have been a year, like it could have been 2 years, you know, before you sat down and went, what the heck is going on? Like, why isn't this working, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the concern, is that if you continue on that path where you're not making as much as you need to even make, I mean, you know, this is a job for us, it's not a hobby, then you're going to reach burnout at some point, and then you're not going to want to do your business, and you're not going to love what you're doing anymore. So how does that, you know, how do you take those numbers and translate them into your product to make them feel, you know, feel like coming to work is worth it?
Exactly.
And
because I'm actually getting paid to come to work.
Exactly.
Because that's the whole idea.
Yeah.
Right?
This is a job, guys, right?
Yes. It's a job that we love, right?
Exactly.
And even though and just because we love it doesn't mean that we shouldn't get paid for it. It's supposed to be, you know, the bonus. It's not supposed to be one or the other, you know, like love your work, but don't make any money.
Yeah.
You know, like we want to love our work and make money. You know, that's the dream, right?
Absolutely.
Is to be able to have it all, right?
Yeah. And so, although it's overwhelming right now looking at all of the changes that I'm implementing, I did feel really empowered by it.
Yeah.
I was able to look at those numbers and think, you know, those are attainable targets for me, those are fair prices for my clients, and yeah, it made sense that I would go forward, you know, with those prices in mind, and continue to just communicate to people the worth of having a product that they can take home with them, and also be able to give them those digitals, because we're living in an age where people still want to
sell them those digitals.
Sell those digitals, not give. Sorry, I've got to get out of that. But yes, be able to. It's not that we're not selling digitals any longer. It's that those are something that's going to come along with a product, or those are still for sale, but they're going to cost something. They're not just given for free.
Exactly.
Yeah.
because they have value,
Yes.
right? And the value of those digital files as an industry, and this is kind of my own thing, is much higher than I think as an industry we have realized. You know, we've been undervaluing our files for about a decade now, and I think it's time to realize, especially in this day and age, how valuable they are. So
yeah, and I think the thing is, wherever you are, you know, if you're in a small town, if you're in a large town, there are going to be lots of different variables that are going to come into play with how you're going to price your products. And you know, that's something that's going to take time to work out, which is why you've created an awesome course.
Exactly. That's a great segue. Thanks, Amanda. But yeah, I have been working on the Pixel Sense Know Your Numbers course now for a long time. We're getting ready to launch it here. Amanda has just gone through most of it. We're still working through a little bit here with her at the studio. And the cool thing about it is that it does actually take into account where you're living and what your desired lifestyle is, and that's how all of those little things come into play when people talk about, oh, well, I live in a small town, I can't charge $300 for an 8x10, and it's like, well, the truth is maybe you don't need to, you know, like your living expenses might be a lot lower than somebody who's living in a city of 6 million people. That's the way it works. So the course actually takes all of those things into factors all those things in and helps you figure out exactly what your price needs to be for that 8x10, for those digital files, for your 10x10 album, all that sort of thing. So
yeah, for sure.
Anyway, I guess just to wrap up here, we'll review those 3 things. So again, 3 things that you can start doing right now to make the transition from shoot and burn to in-person sales. And that would be number 1 is you're implementing a no email the price list policy.
Don't do it.
So from now on, what you're going to do is you're going to pick up the phone, you're going to talk to people, you're going to invite them in, you're going to meet with them. You can give them a base range or a starting at, but you don't want to send them all of that stuff because then that's how they're making their buying decision. You want them to make their buying decision based on you and how great you are, you know?
Yeah.
Number 2 is restricting the file size. Again, this is for people that are transitioning. You don't have to stop overnight and alienate your clientele. If you've been delivering a disc of files, just bring that disc down to the 4x6s and create an opportunity for you to start practicing your in sales, and eventually, you know, you can start to weed that out if you decide to.
Yeah.
And then number 3, of course, is knowing your numbers, figuring out your cost of doing business, sitting down. I know it's not the funnest thing in the world at the beginning, but it's kind of fun near the end once you start to see what it is, like how to value your work, right? And it's like, oh yeah, my work is actually worth this much, you know, because I deserve to get paid for my time, just like every other working person. So,
and the cost of doing business, you know, there is a scale also for people who, you know, might just be starting out in their business, or for people that have been photographers for a long time.
Exactly. For somebody like myself, I have a lot of overhead. You know, I have a studio here, and versus somebody who's just starting out, maybe working from home. So that's the cool thing about the cost of doing business, is that for everybody, it's completely different.
Yeah.
But for everybody, if you do it properly, you will feel 100% confident once you get into the sales room, at least about your numbers. I may not feel 100% confident about other stuff, but we'll talk about that in another episode. So I think,
where should people go?
Oh yeah, so I guess you can go to www.pixelsense.com, check out the blog. That's where you can find more episodes of Wind Down Wednesdays, and I'd like to invite you to also to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for any other blog posts and that sort of thing that comes up. And finally, I think that's it.
Yeah. Thanks so much for your questions, guys. It was great this week, and hope that we've touched on a few of the ones that came in.
Absolutely. And make sure you take a moment to comment either on the blog or in the YouTube comments, and let us know where you're at, what has got you worried, and if you've got any questions for us, we'd be happy to answer them in the next episode.
Absolutely. That's Wind Down Wednesdays, guys.